now, and Senator Butler of California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having this hearing, and thank you all for your testimony and for your work. I'd like to just associate myself with the questioning from Senator Van Hollen relative to the rental market application fees, and Mr. Suero, those that you just mentioned, as they have just an incredibly impactful impact on young people in the country who are trying to find a way to do all the things that we expect them to do, save their money and be prepared for a rainy day, and the $100 application fee or the $50 trash takeout fee. And so I appreciate your comment specifically to that market and to those young people, because I think there are some things that we can and should be doing. Let me turn to actually, Mr. Suero, where you left off, the notion of disproportionate impact and racial wealth gaps relative to junk fees. The Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances showed that while the wealth of Black and Hispanic households grew at a faster rate than the wealth of white households, disparities continue to persist, in part due to the proliferation of junk fees. Consumers of color are often pushed out of mainstream financial products into fringe financial services and predatory financial products, including high-cost loans and credit cards. You know this as well as I do, and thank you for helping my team facilitate that financial literacy webinar last week. Mr. Suero, Mr. Rust, either of you can take the question, but what are the ways that junk fees perpetuate existing racial wealth gaps and hinder generational wealth building?
Yeah, so I want to start on the access side first. So we've cited already today that high costs are one of the big barriers to obtaining these products. So we know from the FDIC survey, we've done surveys, if you just go out and ask people, why don't you have a bank account? They'll cite cost as one of the biggest barriers. I don't want to pay, it's too expensive to pay for an overdraft fee or a monthly maintenance fee, that type of thing. Same thing for credit card products. They'll tell you the same thing. It's too expensive, interest rates are too high, credit card late fees are too high. So on the one hand, we're creating a situation in which low-income people and people of color disproportionately are left out because they're concentrated in those working class, low-income jobs. So that's on the one hand. And if you look at the access to those products, they always have the least amount of access to those products. In the bigger picture, in terms of wealth, the people who do have these products are also paying the highest fees and the highest costs. And so, you think about what's going on in that situation. That this is a continual process where working class people of color are paying a bigger percentage of their money back into financial institutions. And oftentimes it's the biggest financial institutions. We're talking multi-billion, trillion-dollar institutions that are getting that money. So it's a wealth extraction, and it's also a financial exclusion process.
Thank you for that, Mr. Rust. I'd love to get your thoughts to that question, and I have done some work to introduce a set of bills relative to expanding language inclusivity and making sure that we are making the information much more accessible to people whose first language is not English. And so I would love to have you combine these two issues for me, if you can. How and why are we here, and then what are things like language access and ways that companies continue to take advantage of these communities?
So sure, thank you. I'll start with the first half and touching on a bit of what Santi said, but adding, the Gen Z and millennials face a housing market that's dramatically different than what generations before did. Currently, something like 30% of Gen Z after high school or college are living with their parents. And this is really about a lack of supply of housing, right? But this means that they're not getting on the escalator to home ownership, to wealth building, to all the aspects of what we associate with the American dream. So related to your question, these new generations, younger generations, are more diverse, right? The bargain they're seeing isn't the same bargain. And so to the point about making sure that financial institutions use inclusive language, well, this is very important. We've worked a lot over time in things like adverse action notices, right? When you are turned down for credit, well, why were you turned down for credit? Well, if it's in English, that doesn't really help. If you're someone who comes from a family that speaks a different language, right? This is vitally important to being fair.